My fiancé dumped me because his ex faked a coma. His mother yelled, "Stay single if you don't respect love." So I disappeared without a word. Recently they found me standing speechless outside a grand Venice cathedral, where I was walking down the aisle, marrying his ex's younger millionaire brother who worshipped me. Stay single if you don't respect love. Natalie's voice echoed through the empty restaurant, her words slicing through me like the chef's knife I'd wielded for years. But it wasn't directed at me. It was aimed at her son, my ex-fiancé, who stood with his head bowed, unable to meet anyone's eyes after what he'd done. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the stainless steel prep table, the same table where Caleb had first kissed me 2 years ago. The kitchen of Harvest and Hearth, once my sanctuary, now felt like a tomb for my buried dreams. Just 3 hours earlier, I had been executive chef Aria Mitchell, respected culinary artist and future wife to the owner's son. Now I was just Aria, abandoned, humiliated and burning with a quiet rage that threatened to consume me. "I never meant to hurt you, Aria," Caleb whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of refrigerators. "Penelope needs me. Her condition. Her condition is a lie," I said flatly, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded despite the hurricane raging inside me. "But your feelings for her aren't, are they? They never were." If this story of heartbreak and unexpected revenge resonates with you, hit subscribe to join our community. It's free and you'll never miss another journey of someone rising from betrayal to find their own justice. Now let's see how Aria's world came crashing down. The truth had been hiding in plain sight, like a bitter ingredient in an otherwise perfect dish. All those late-night texts he'd try to hide. The way he'd grow distant whenever her name came up in conversation. I had ignored the signs, too busy perfecting my béarnaise sauce and planning our forever. When I first started at Harvest and Hearth 5 years ago, I was nobody, just another line cook with big dreams and student loans. Joel Harrington took a chance on me when no other upscale restaurant would. I worked my way up, impressing him with my work ethic and innovative take on classic American cuisine. My maple-glazed duck with cherry reduction became the restaurant's signature dish, written up in food magazines and bringing in diners from 3 states away. "Your hands speak truth through food," Joel once told me, his eyes crinkling with pride. "That's rare, Aria. Most chefs cook with their ego. You cook with your soul." When Caleb started hanging around the kitchen more, I assumed he was there on his father's orders, learning the business he would one day inherit. I didn't realize he was watching me, fascinated by my dedication. Our romance bloomed slowly, coffee after closing, walks by the river discussing menu ideas, and finally, a kiss that tasted like the raspberry sorbet I'd been experimenting with. "You're different," he told me. "After Penelope, I didn't think I'd feel this way again." Penelope Kingston. The name that would eventually destroy everything. His college sweetheart, the society girl whose family vacationed with senators. She'd broken his heart 3 years before I met him, leaving him for a finance guy in Chicago. I never worried about her, she was ancient history, or so I thought. Joel had embraced our relationship with unexpected enthusiasm. "You've got something special, Aria," he'd said one evening after service, placing a fatherly hand on my shoulder. "You remind me of myself at your age, hungry for perfection, never satisfied with good enough. Caleb needs someone like you." When Caleb proposed in the herb garden behind the restaurant, Joel was the first to celebrate, opening a bottle of Dom Perignon he'd been saving for a special occasion. "To my future daughter," he toasted, his eyes misty. The daughter I never had but always wanted. The wedding planning consumed my free time. Joel insisted on hosting the reception at the restaurant, closing it for a full weekend, something he'd never done before. "Nothing but the best for my kids," he'd beamed. I had designed a 9-course tasting menu that told our love story through food. The invitations had gone out just last week. Then Penelope came back to town. Just catching up with an old friend, Caleb had assured me when I found out they'd met for coffee. I believed him because that's what trust is supposed to be. One coffee turned into texting, which turned into lunch. I was too busy finalizing wedding details and running the kitchen to notice how his eyes lit up when his phone buzzed. 3 days ago, Caleb rushed out of the restaurant mid-service. "Emergency," he'd mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "Penelope's in the hospital. Collapsed suddenly. They don't know if she'll wake up." I gave him space, covered his responsibilities at the restaurant, and waited for updates. When he didn't come home that night, I told myself he was being a good friend. When he didn't come home the second night, worry crept in like smoke under a door. This morning, I overheard Natalie on the phone in Joel's office. "What do you mean Penelope's doctor hasn't authorized any visitors? Caleb's been with her for 2 days." The pots and pans I'd been organizing clattered to the floor. That's when I knew. Now, standing in the kitchen where I had built my career and my relationship, I watched it all crumble. "I still love her, Arya," Caleb admitted, finally looking up. His eyes were red-rimmed but determined. "I tried to move on with you, and you're amazing. You truly are. But when I heard she collapsed, that she might die, I realized I never stopped loving her." Joel burst through the swinging doors, his normally composed demeanor shattered. "She's not in a coma, you fool. I just got off the phone with Dr. Ramirez. Penelope Kingston hasn't been admitted to any hospital in the tri-state area." The look on Caleb's face told me everything. Shock, then guilt, then the slow dawn of realization that he'd been manipulated, but had also willingly participated in the deception. "You threw away everything for a lie," Joel continued, his voice breaking. "You broke the heart of the best woman you'll ever know. For what? A manipulative game." That's when Natalie stepped forward, her elegant frame vibrating with fury as she delivered the line that would echo in my nightmares for months. "Stay single if you don't respect love." As the family drama unfolded before me, something inside me shut down. I slowly untied my chef's apron, the same one Caleb had given me on our first anniversary, with Chef Arya Harrington embroidered on it in anticipation of our marriage. I folded it carefully, placed it on the counter, and walked out the back door without a word. The evening air hit my face, cool and indifferent to my pain. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I felt something hardening inside me, a resolve crystallizing from the molten ruins of my shattered dreams. They wouldn't see me break. They wouldn't see me beg. And soon they wouldn't see me at all. I walked aimlessly through the darkening streets, the restaurant growing smaller behind me. My apartment wasn't home anymore. It was filled with Caleb's things, our shared dreams, wedding catalogs. I checked into a modest hotel downtown, paid cash, and collapsed onto the bed, still wearing my chef's pants and t-shirt that smelled of rosemary and betrayal. Meanwhile, across town, Joel Harrington was about to uncover the full extent of his son's deception. Joel had always prided himself on his connections. In a town like ours, relationships were currency, and Joel had built his restaurant empire on knowing the right people. Dr. Marcus Ramirez happened to be one of those people, the chief of neurology at Memorial Hospital and a regular at Harvest and Hearth for Tuesday night dinners. "Joel, I'm telling you, we have no patient by that name," Dr. Ramirez insisted over the phone. "I've checked with every hospital in the area. Nobody has admitted a Penelope Kingston for any condition, let alone a coma." Joel's grip tightened on his oak desk, the same desk where he drafted the menu for his first restaurant 30 years ago. "Marcus, are you absolutely certain?" "I've been practicing medicine for 25 years, Joel. I think I know how to check hospital records." After hanging up, Joel sat in silence, the weight of what this meant sinking into his bones. His son, his only son, had thrown away a relationship with an exceptional woman for a lie. Or worse, had been complicit in that lie. The morning after I left, Joel called an emergency family meeting at his home. The tension in the living room was thick enough to cut with a knife as Caleb, Natalie, and Kennedy gathered, unaware of the storm about to break. "Dad, what's this about?" Kennedy asked, tucking her legs underneath her on the leather sofa. At 28, Kennedy was the practical one, the business major who helped manage the restaurant's finances while her brother charmed the guests. Joel didn't answer immediately. He poured himself 2 fingers of scotch despite it being only 10 a.m. "Caleb, I want you to tell me again about Penelope's condition." Caleb shifted uncomfortably. She's stable but still unresponsive. The doctors aren't sure when she'll wake up." "At which hospital?" "Memorial." "Why are you—" "That's interesting," Joel interrupted, swirling his scotch, "because I spoke with Dr. Ramirez last night. He assures me that not only is Penelope Kingston not a patient at Memorial, but she hasn't been admitted to any hospital in the tri-state area." The color drained from Caleb's face. Kennedy gasped softly. "Would you care to explain why you've destroyed your engagement to an extraordinary woman over a fabricated medical emergency?" It's not what you think, Caleb stammered. Then what is it? Natalie interjected, her voice dangerously calm. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've either been duped like a fool or you're lying to all of us. The truth spilled out in fragments. Penelope had returned to town claiming she'd made a terrible mistake leaving him. When Caleb didn't immediately fall back into her arms, she orchestrated the fake emergency. Yes, Caleb had realized the truth within hours of rushing to her side, but by then old feelings had resurfaced. They'd spent those 2 days in her lake house, rekindling what they'd once had. And Arya? Joel demanded. Did you spare even a thought for her while you were rekindling? Caleb had the decency to look ashamed. I didn't plan for any of this to happen. I truly cared for Arya, but with Penelope. Stop, Natalie held up her hand. Don't you dare try to justify this. Love isn't something you discard when something shinier comes along. It's a commitment, a choice you make every day. Mom, you don't understand. Stay single if you don't respect love. Natalie's words cut through the room like a whip. If this is how you honor commitment, then you have no business making promises to anyone. Kennedy, who had remained silent until now, looked at her brother with disappointment. Arya deserved better. She worked harder than anyone I know, for this family, for the restaurant, for you. The family confrontation lasted hours. By afternoon, Joel had come to a decision that would alter the family dynamic forever. He called his lawyer from his study while the others waited in tense silence. Richard, I need to make changes to my will and the restaurant ownership structure. Immediately. His voice was flat but determined. The amended documents arrived by courier the next morning. The family gathered once more as Joel outlined the changes. Kennedy would now inherit 75% of the Harrington Restaurant Group, with Caleb receiving only a 25% share, a complete reversal of the previous arrangement. Dad, you can't be serious, Caleb protested. The restaurants were supposed to be mine. We've talked about this my whole life. And I always assumed you'd be the man I raised you to be, Joel replied coldly. Kennedy has shown the judgment and integrity this business requires. You have not. Kennedy looked torn between vindication and sympathy for her brother. Maybe this is temporary, Dad. Until Caleb. It's not temporary, Joel cut her off. Richard has filed the papers. It's done. Throughout the city, people whispered about Arya's sudden absence. Joel found her resignation letter the morning after the confrontation. A single page thanking him for the opportunities, apologizing for the inconvenience, and requesting her final check be mailed to her mother's address in another state. When Joel went to her apartment, the landlord told him she'd terminated her lease and moved out overnight. Her phone number was disconnected. Her social media accounts deactivated. She's gone, Joel told the family, defeat evident in his voice. Really gone. A week later, when Caleb finally worked up the courage to go to her mother's home in Michigan, he learned Arya had never arrived. She had vanished as completely as the smoke from a snuffed candle, leaving nothing but the lingering scent of what might have been. And somewhere, in a place none of them would think to look, I was rebuilding myself from the ground up. One recipe, one breath, one day at a time. They would never find me until I wanted to be found. 6 months passed like a slow-cooking reduction, concentrated and intense. My new life in Venice was taking shape, one delicate layer at a time. I'd chosen this floating city for its labyrinthine streets where I could lose myself, for its culinary traditions that both challenged and comforted me, and most importantly, for how utterly unlikely it was that anyone from my former life would think to look for me here. Meanwhile, back in America, the consequences of that fateful night continued to unfold. Caleb's reunion with Penelope had soured within weeks. The thrill of forbidden reconnection quickly gave way to the reality of why they'd broken up in the first place. Her constant need for drama, his inability to fully commit. The coma ruse had revealed character flaws neither could ignore, and when Penelope suggested another elaborate scheme to win back Joel's approval, Caleb finally saw their relationship for what it was, toxic and manipulative. I've lost everything that actually mattered, he confessed to Kennedy over drinks at what used to be his favorite bar. Dad barely speaks to me. The staff at the restaurant look at me like I'm a villain in some soap opera. And Arya. God, I didn't realize what I had until. Don't, Kennedy cut him off. You don't get to play the victim here. You made your choices. The restaurant, once his assumed inheritance, now felt like a temporary workspace where he performed tasks but had no real stake. Joel had him managing the books and inventory, grunt work that Kennedy had previously handled, while she was being groomed for leadership. Caleb's once charming smile had faded, replaced by dark circles under his eyes and a perpetual slump to his shoulders. Joel watched his son's downward spiral with a mixture of satisfaction and paternal concern. Justice needed to be served, but watching Caleb self-destruct brought him no pleasure. More troubling was the void Arya had left, not just in their kitchen but in the family dynamic. She had been the bridge between Joel's old-school culinary traditions and modern innovation, between his gruff exterior and his genuine love for his craft. Late one night after closing, Joel found himself staring at the framed review that had first celebrated Arya's maple-glazed duck. On impulse he picked up the phone. "Redwood Investigations? This is Joel Harrington. I need your best person for a delicate matter." The private investigator, a former police detective named Diana Morrow, listened carefully to Joel's request. "To be clear, you're asking me to locate your former employee, not to interfere with her new life? Just confirmation that she's safe and well?" "That's right," Joel confirmed. "I just need to know she's okay. And if she's in any kind of trouble, well, I'd want to help. She's like family." As Diana began her search, I was settling into my routine at Cucina Americana, a small but ambitious restaurant in Venice's Cannaregio district, far from the tourist crowds. The owner, an Italian-American named Marco Bellucci, had taken a chance on me after tasting my portfolio dish, a risotto that honored Italian tradition while incorporating distinctly American maple and bourbon flavors. "This is not Italian, and yet," Marco had said, closing his eyes as he savored the bite, "it speaks the same language as my grandmother's cooking. Authentic but surprising." I'd started as a line cook, despite my executive chef experience. It felt right to earn my place again, to build something new from scratch. My one-bedroom apartment overlooking a quiet canal became my sanctuary. I'd watch the morning light dance on the water, sip espresso from a tiny cup and feel for fleeting moments something like peace. 4 months into my Venetian life, Marco entered the kitchen with news. "There's a culinary competition next month. Regional chefs presenting fusion concepts. I've entered our restaurant." "That's wonderful," I said, continuing to slice fennel with practiced precision. "You will represent us, Arya. Your maple bourbon risotto, your duck with cherry gastrique. This is exactly what they're looking for." I hesitated, the knife pausing mid-slice. Public recognition meant visibility. Visibility meant risk. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of spotlight." Marco's weathered hand covered mine. "The world deserves your talent, Cara. And you deserve to be seen." The competition was held in a restored palazzo overlooking the Grand Canal. Chefs from across northern Italy presented their interpretations of fusion cuisine to a panel of judges and invited guests. I worked in focused silence, the familiar rhythms of cooking centering me as I prepared my signature dish. "Your technique is impressive," said a voice beside me as I plated my final presentation. "American." I looked up to find myself staring into warm hazel eyes. He was tall, with dark hair swept casually to one side and a smile that seemed genuinely curious rather than competitive. "Pie technique or me?" I asked, surprised by my own willingness to engage. "Both, I think," he replied. "I'm Ryan Kingston, guest judge and general culinary enthusiast." The surname registered no connection in my mind. Kingston was common enough, and I'd locked away memories of my previous life so thoroughly that Penelope's last name was buried deep in that vault. "Arya Mitchell," I replied, using my mother's maiden name. "And yes, American techniques with Italian soul." Ryan tasted my dish officially during the judging round, his expression thoughtful as he savored each element. Later, as I accepted the second-place medal, a victory for an outsider in Italy, he sought me out again. "Your food tells a story," he said, genuine admiration in his voice. "Mind sharing what inspired the bourbon notes in the risotto?" Something about his direct gaze and unassuming manner disarmed me. We talked for hours at a cafe afterward about food philosophy, culinary memories, and the intimate connection between emotion and flavor. Not once did he mention his wealth or status, though I would later learn he owned one of Italy's most successful food import companies. Our first date wasn't planned as such. He invited me to a small producer's market to taste rare olive oils, and the day somehow extended into evening. Our second date was at my suggestion, teaching him to make proper biscuits and gravy in my tiny apartment kitchen, both of us laughing as flour dusted every surface. For the first time since leaving America, I felt the tight bands around my heart loosening. Ryan valued authenticity, in food and in life. His passion matched my own and his respect for my boundaries never wavered. When I deflected questions about my past, he focused on my present and future instead. "Whatever brought you to Venice," he said one evening as we walked along a moonlit canal, "I'm selfishly grateful for it." I couldn't have known then how our separate pasts were connected by invisible threads, or how those threads would eventually pull tight, drawing together lives once thought forever separated by betrayal and ocean waters. 8 months into my relationship with Ryan, I had almost forgotten what it felt like to look over my shoulder. The woman who stared back at me from Venice's countless reflective surfaces was someone new. Executive chef Aria Mitchell of Cucina Americana, recently featured in European culinary magazines, half of a couple that local restaurateurs referred to as perfect pairing. My life had transformed from the ashes of betrayal into something unexpectedly beautiful. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Diana Morrow sat across from Joel in his office, sliding a manila folder across his mahogany desk. "I found her," she said simply. It took longer than expected. She was careful about covering her tracks. Joel hesitated before opening the folder, as if afraid of what he might find. "Is she all right?" Diana's expression softened. "More than all right. She's thriving." The folder contained photos of me in Chef White's outside a charming restaurant, receiving an award at a regional competition, and walking hand in hand with a tall, dark-haired man along a Venetian canal. My smile in the photographs was genuine, something Joel hadn't seen in the final weeks before I'd left. "Venice," Joel murmured, studying the images. "Of all places." "She's built quite a reputation there," Diana continued. "Executive chef position, culinary awards, mentions in European food publications." Joel nodded slowly, feeling a complex mixture of pride and loss. "Thank you, Diana. That's all I needed to know." But fate had other plans. That same evening, Joel received a call from an Italian business associate seeking American distribution for a specialty food product line. The associate mentioned the upcoming wedding of his friend's son, Ryan Kingston. Perhaps you've heard of Kingston Imports? A magnificent ceremony planned at the Cathedral of San Marco next month. Joel might have thought nothing of it except for the timing, and the nagging feeling that he'd heard the Kingston name before. When he mentioned it casually to Caleb the next day, his son's face drained of color. "Kingston? As in Penelope Kingston?" Within hours, what had been intended as merely confirmation of my well-being transformed into airline reservations and hotel bookings. Joel convinced himself that they should attend to offer congratulations in person, a thin justification that barely concealed his deeper motives. Natalie and Kennedy agreed to come, partly out of curiosity, partly to keep Joel and Caleb from making a scene. Caleb was the most reluctant. "This is insane," he protested as they packed. "We can't just crash her life after all this time. What if she doesn't want to see us?" "Then we'll respect that and leave," Joel answered firmly. "But I need to know she's truly happy. I need closure." What none of them knew was that 2 nights before their flight departed, Ryan had taken me to Cucina Americana after hours. The restaurant was transformed, candles glowing on every surface, white roses and sprigs of rosemary adorning the tables. "What's all this?" I asked, taking in the romantic scene. Ryan guided me to the center of the room where we'd first met during that culinary competition. He took both my hands in his. "This is where I first tasted your risotto and knew I was in trouble," he said with a tender smile. "Because I realized food could make me feel things I'd never felt before. And then I got to know the chef behind the food." He dropped to one knee, producing a vintage ring box. Inside was not the ostentatious diamond I might have expected from a man of his wealth, but a delicate emerald surrounded by tiny pearls, elegant, unique, and perfectly suited to my taste. "Aria Mitchell, you've transformed not just flavor profiles but my entire life. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision as I whispered, "Yes." The wedding preparations moved quickly. Ryan's family had connections throughout Venice, opening doors to venues that would normally be booked years in advance. When he suggested the historic Cathedral of San Marco, I hesitated, remembering my abandoned wedding plans back home. But the grandeur and history of the cathedral felt right somehow, as if getting married in such a timeless place might bless our union with permanence. I never asked about Ryan's family beyond his parents, and he never pressed me about mine. We both carried our private histories, content to build our future without dwelling on the past. When he mentioned having a sister who was complicated, I nodded in understanding without requesting details. When I explained that my parents had passed years ago and I had no family to invite, he simply held me closer. The morning of our wedding dawned with that peculiar Venetian light that painters have tried to capture for centuries, golden, shimmering, almost otherworldly. As I prepared in a private room of the cathedral, fitting the final touches on my sleek, modern gown, I felt a strange sense of completion. The woman who had fled in the night, broken and nameless, was now walking confidently toward a future of her own choosing. Outside the cathedral, tourists mingled with arriving guests, many unaware that a wedding was about to take place. Among them stood 4 Americans, jet-lagged but determined, consulting a map of Venice. "This is it," Joel confirmed, looking up at the magnificent facade. "Cathedral of San Marco. We should wait until after the ceremony," Kennedy suggested sensibly. "Approach her at the reception, somewhere private." But Caleb wasn't listening. His attention had been caught by a familiar face in the crowd, a woman with perfectly highlighted hair and designer sunglasses, looking impatient as she checked her watch repeatedly. "Penelope?" he called out before he could stop himself. She whirled around, her surprise quickly masked by a practiced smile. "Caleb, what on earth are you doing in Venice?" "We could ask you the same thing," Natalie replied coolly. Penelope removed her sunglasses with a flourish. "My brother's getting married today. I'm here as family obviously, though I barely know the bride. Some chef he met at a competition. Ryan always did have unusual taste." The pieces clicked together in Joel's mind with horrifying clarity. "This Ryan, he's your brother? And he's marrying a chef?" "Yes," Penelope answered, oblivious to the tension suddenly radiating from the group. "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. I should really get inside." "What's the bride's name?" Caleb interrupted, his voice hoarse. Penelope shrugged. "Aria something. Mitchell, I think. Ryan's kept her pretty separate from the family, to be honest. They've only been together about a year." The color drained from 4 faces simultaneously as the cathedral bells began to toll, announcing the imminent ceremony. Without another word, they moved as one toward the massive doors, drawn by an invisible force stronger than propriety or reason. Inside, I stood just out of sight, clutching my bouquet of white roses and lavender, waiting for my cue. The cathedral's magnificent arches soared overhead, its ancient stones witness to countless vows over the centuries. As the music swelled, I took my first step forward, ready to begin the walk that would lead me to Ryan and our future. And then I saw them, 4 figures frozen in the middle of the aisle, staring at me with expressions of absolute shock. The past and present collided with the force of tectonic plates meeting, and I stopped dead in my tracks, my world shifting beneath my feet once more. Time seemed to stand still in the cathedral's vast space. The organist continued playing, unaware of the drama unfolding. The guests murmured in confusion. Ryan turned from the altar, concern etched across his face as he saw me frozen midway down the aisle. I had imagined this moment in nightmares, facing Caleb again, but never like this, never here. My fingers tightened around my bouquet until my knuckles turned white. Then with a deep breath I did what I had trained myself to do in the most chaotic of kitchens. I focused. Meeting Ryan's questioning gaze, I gave him a slight nod and continued my walk, chin high, moving with deliberate grace past the 4 stunned figures without acknowledging their presence. This was my day, my choice, my future. I would not let the past derail me again. The ceremony proceeded in a dreamlike haze. I spoke my vows clearly, the words echoing through the ancient cathedral. When Ryan kissed me as his wife, the applause of our guests momentarily drowned out the pounding of my heart. Only as we turned to face the congregation did I allow myself to scan the crowd again. They had moved to the back, watching in silent shock. As we exited through the side door for the traditional private moment before joining the reception, Ryan squeezed my hand. "Who are those people who upset you?" "The Americans in the middle aisle." Before I could answer, the cathedral's side chamber door opened and Joel stepped in, followed by Natalie, Kennedy, and a visibly uncomfortable Caleb. "I apologize for the intrusion," Joel began formally, his eyes never leaving my face. "But we need to speak with Arya." Ryan moved protectively to my side. "I don't know who you are, but this is hardly the time or place." "It's all right," I said softly, placing my hand on Ryan's arm. The trembling I had felt earlier was gone. In its place was a strange calm, like the eye of a storm. "Ryan, these are people from my past. Joel Harrington, my former employer. His wife Natalie, daughter Kennedy, and—" I paused, meeting Caleb's gaze directly for the first time. "His son Caleb, who was once my fiancé." Ryan's expression shifted from confusion to understanding, then to wariness. "Your fiancé? The one who—" "Yes," I interrupted gently. "And now apparently your brother-in-law." The door burst open again as Penelope rushed in, her face flushed with anger. "Ryan, what is happening? Why did you marry her? Did you know who she is?" Ryan stared at his sister. "What are you talking about? She was Caleb's fiancée. The chef from his father's restaurant that he left for me." Penelope pointed at me accusingly. "Did you do this on purpose? Is this some kind of revenge?" The small chamber filled with a tense silence as everyone absorbed the tangled web of connections. I stepped forward, my wedding gown rustling softly against the ancient stone floor. "I had no idea Ryan was your brother, Penelope," I said evenly. "Just as I'm certain he had no idea about my history with Caleb." Ryan's grip on my hand tightened. "I didn't. But it wouldn't have changed anything if I had known." Caleb stepped forward, his face a mask of conflicted emotions. "Arya, I don't know what to say. When we found out where you were, that you were getting married, we never imagined that I would be marrying the brother of the woman you left me for." I finished for him, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "Life has a strange way of coming full circle." Joel cleared his throat. "We didn't come to cause trouble, Arya. When Diana, our investigator, found you, I just wanted to know you were okay. You disappeared so completely." "I needed to," I replied simply. "I needed to rebuild my life without any reminders of what happened." Kennedy approached cautiously. "You've done amazingly well. We've read about your success here." A knot formed in my throat at her kind words. Of all the Harringtons, Kennedy had always been the most straightforward, the least complicated in her affections. "Thank you," I managed. Natalie stepped forward next, elegant as ever, studying my face. "You look happy, Arya." "Truly happy." "I am," I confirmed, meeting her gaze. "Ryan sees me for who I am. He values what I value." The meaning behind my words wasn't lost on anyone. Caleb flinched visibly. Penelope scoffed, but Ryan pulled me closer, dropping a protective kiss on my temple. "I'd like to understand," Ryan said quietly. "The full story. From everyone." And so, in that small chamber of a grand cathedral in Venice on my wedding day, the tangled past unraveled. Caleb explained his weakness, his mistake in believing he still loved Penelope. Penelope reluctantly admitted to orchestrating the fake medical emergency that had been the catalyst for our broken engagement. Joel spoke of his disappointment, the changed will, the search to find me. And I shared my journey, the night I fled, the rebuilding of my career, and the chance meeting with Ryan that had led us here. When the full story emerged, Ryan turned to Penelope with newfound understanding. "You manipulated Caleb, destroyed his engagement, and now you're angry that he's married to someone who makes him happy? This stops now, Penelope. No more games." Penelope opened her mouth to protest, but something in Ryan's expression made her reconsider. She left the chamber without another word, the click of her heels echoing against the stone. Joel approached me hesitantly. "Arya, I can't undo what my son did, but I want you to know how proud I am of what you've accomplished. Your talent always deserved recognition." "Thank you, Joel," I said sincerely. "Your belief in me gave me the foundation to start over." When we finally emerged to join our reception, the strange intersection of past and present had shifted something fundamental. The weight I had carried for so long had lifted. Ryan and I celebrated with our guests, including the Harringtons, who kept a respectful distance but whose presence somehow completed a circle that needed closing. 6 months later, I invited them all, Joel, Natalie, Kennedy, Caleb, even Penelope, to a private dinner at Cucina Americana. Ryan stood beside me as I served each course, each dish telling part of my journey. The maple-glazed duck that had first earned Joel's respect, the risotto that had introduced me to Ryan, and for dessert, a new creation. A bitter chocolate tart with sweet cherry compote and delicate spun sugar. The bitter and the sweet, I explained as I presented the final course. Both necessary parts of a complete experience. As we dined together in a room that had once witnessed Ryan's proposal, the conversation flowed more easily than any of us might have expected. Caleb spoke of his new position managing a small farm-to-table restaurant, starting from scratch, earning respect rather than inheriting it. Penelope mentioned her therapy sessions, a hint of genuine self-awareness in her voice. Kennedy shared news of her pregnancy, the continuation of the Harrington legacy. And in that moment, watching these formerly fractured lives finding their separate paths toward healing, I realized that sometimes justice isn't about punishment or revenge. Sometimes it's about growth, forgiveness, and the grace to let your own happiness be your greatest triumph. If Aria's journey from heartbreak to triumph moved you, please hit subscribe to support our channel. Every subscription helps us share more stories of people who found happiness as their ultimate revenge. Thank you for being part of our storytelling family.